So, good evening, everyone. My name is Aliel Dominique, and I'm a proud board member of the Haitian Ladies Network. I'm joined tonight by my fellow board member, Elodie Manuel, who will be closing us out later this evening. It's truly an honor to welcome you to tonight's webinar, A Changing Landscape, Critical Updates for Haitians in the U.S. For those who may be new to HLN, we are the largest global platform connecting more than 100,000 women and girls of Haitian descent. We're based in DC, in Washington, DC, and led by a 10-member board committed to building community, visibility, and opportunity across generations. Our year-round programming is guided by 5 programmatic pillars that work together to meet the evolving needs of our community: financial well-being, wellness and healing, voices and influence, culture and heritage, and bridging Haiti and its diaspora. These pillars shape our workshops, conversations, and gatherings throughout the year, including timely sessions like this one. I want to gratefully acknowledge the City of North Miami, whose support helps make these webinars possible and accessible to our community. Tonight's session comes at a critical moment. Many of you have felt the shifting ground, the uncertainty around TPS, sudden policy reversals, appointment cancellations, changes in enforcement, and the growing confusion about what rights and protections our community still has. We've been hearing these concerns across our network, and we knew we needed to bring trusted experts together to provide clarity, accurate information, and practical guidance. That is what tonight is about: equipping you, your families, and your neighborhoods with the information you need in this rapidly changing landscape. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for this evening. Paul Christian Alfi is the lead organizer and political director at FAM, Family Action Network Movement. Mr. Nalfi brings to the table more than 20 years of professional experience in Haiti and in South Florida in the decentralized emergency coordination, organizing, and advocacy fields. Area of focus have included community and gender empowerment, self-determination, democratic confederalism, water and the environment, and the fight to end cholera in Haiti. FAM's advocacy team have spearheaded organizing efforts around fights, including the struggles for immigrant rights, Little Haiti community empowerment, and Haitian-led solutions in Haiti. So, without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to our moderator for tonight, Mr. Nafi. And if the translators are ready, Mr. Nafi, please let them give the instructions before you start. Thank you.
Okay, so I would like to first introduce the speakers, and then we will be giving some notes on the translation availability. I want to say that it is truly an honor for me to moderate this crucial panel as our community is navigating some very, very, very difficult times regarding the immigration system, regarding threats on our community at large. And it's really a pleasure to introduce our 3 speakers. We have attorney Franle Julien, who handles a wide variety of cases in the areas of personal injury, immigration, wills and trusts, criminal defense, and family law. Mr. Julien has a degree, magna cum laude, from bachelor's degree from Florida International University, where he received the English Department's Outstanding Achievement Award in English. He then went to law school. He obtained his law degree from FIU. Franle is regularly on Haitian radio and television and has published numerous pieces in the Miami Herald, the Sun Sentinel, Jamaica Observer, and Haiti's Le National. And we all are very familiar with Maître Julien, not only for his law practice, but for his also his presence on social media in terms of giving the community crucial advice. I now turn to State Representative Doti Joseph, House District 108. The Honorable Doti Joseph was the first Haitian American to hold a legislative leadership role in Florida as the minority leader pro tempore. She graduated from Yale University and Georgetown Law. She has done a wide variety of work with the U.S. Department of Justice, advocacy for refugees with UNHCR, and has championed laws protecting survivors of violence, securing justice for victims of police brutality, and promoting meaningful criminal justice reform. And she's the former president of the Haitian Lawyers Association and continues to serve her community through legal advocacy and civic leadership. Finally, Michelle Abjectger, who is the managing attorney for Abjectger Immigration Law. She's been an attorney since September 2016. She focuses her practice on business and investment immigration and represents individuals, families, employers, and investors in a wide range of immigrant and non-immigrant matters. And I think she will really fill us in with a lot of the specifics, both of her expertise and as well as really how she can best serve the community during these very difficult times. She did serve as the president of AILA Student Chapter and president of the Cardozo Legal Society. And she is a graduate with honors of the University of Miami School of Law as a Dean Scholarship recipient. So we want to briefly explain the question and answer format. You can drop questions in the chat, and the speakers will address them at the end of the session. So the questions, the Q&A is after all of the speaker remarks, and there is the availability for translation, and we will segue to our translation team to give further remarks on that. Thank you.
I think before we continue on, Elodie, it looks like Ralph is not going to be able to do the explainer. If you're able to tell people how to access the interpretation.
Absolutely. I think Ralph is already in the interpretation room and interpreting. And I know that
Yes.
because I hopped over to the Creole room.
Thank you.
So at the bottom of your screens, you'll see a number of icons. There should be a little globe there that says interpretation. Do you, the panelists, see it? So that I can confirm that our participants would also see that.
So for me, if I click on more next to the Q&A, then you go up there, you'll see the little globe for interpretation.
Perfect. Okay. Yes. So if you don't see the globe already, mine is already activated, which is possibly why it's appearing as a primary icon. As the representative indicated, click on the three dots or more. You will see an option written interpretation. Once you click on that, it'll give you the languages that the interpretation is available in, and you should immediately start hearing this panel in.
Ok, map tout di lan kreol tout pou moun ki pale kreol. Si ou bezwen tande suiv sa nap pataje jodi an kreol, gen yon opsyon, lo ale pa an ba, wap yon opsyon ki swa di interpretasyon, gen yon ti icon avek on globe la dan. Sou pa we sa, wap klike sou bagay ki make more, wap we 3 ti period yo, ou klike sou li, wap we interpretasyon la dan, klike sou sa, apre sa wap chwazi langaj ke bezwen. And that's it for me.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we want to move forward with the program. And Rep. Joseph, you said that that's it for you, but you are now it.
Oh, just kidding. All right. So the question was, what's been going on the past 12 months? Is that basically it?
The state of play, yes.
Yeah, the state of play. So, over the last year, immigration policy has shifted dramatically and rapidly, impacting Haitians in Haiti and across the US, but the immigrant community in general in the United States. From changing deadlines, revoked legal status, increased fees, and a lack of clear communication from USCIS. The overall trend has been less protection, more barriers and obstacles, leading to many people falling into legal limbo. So what I'm going to do right now is give you as quick as I can, overview of a lot of the federal changes that are particularly impactful to our community. And some of it, we just find ourselves in larger drama. So first off, this administration has put an indefinite ban on refugees from all countries except for white Afrikaners from South Africa. They also terminated the Biden humanitarian parole program, which was applicable to people from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, better known as the CHNV parole program. We already know that these are people who followed every legal step, underwent background checks, paid their fees, had sponsors, and lawful entry. Well, the government decided to pull the rug out from under these folks. Courts briefly paused the revocations, but on May 30th of earlier this year, the Supreme Court allowed DHS to resume terminating the status while the litigation continues. In terms of temporary protected status, we all know that there's been a lot of drama. The Trump administration tried to shorten it by 6 months. But the courts blocked the early termination. There was some back and forth. Finally, DHS confirmed that the February 3rd, 2026 date still remains in effect of when it will end. And just earlier this month, they had announced that they will be not renewing TPS. Now, there is litigation and strategies addressing that, which if we have time, we'll get into later. But there are pending challenges that will try to force the administration to reevaluate that determination based on actual factors going on in the country. And we don't need to get into all of that just yet. So Haitian TPS holders will remain protected from deportation through February 3rd, 2026. Now there's the whole drama with birthright citizenship. Earlier this year, Trump issued an executive order that tried to end birthright citizenship, which is protected in the Constitution and reaffirmed by the 14th Amendment and lots of court decisions and deemed well-established law. Every federal court that has faced this challenge has protected birthright citizenship. But in one of those cases, in July 10th of this year, the Supreme Court issued a restriction that made lower courts not able to issue nationwide injunctions because they claim that only they can do that. Now, this is a sweeping grab of judicial power by the Supreme Court because the federal law is the federal law. Normally, well, I'm not going to get into a whole constitutional law class with you, but normally to get that level, there has to be a conflict or something that requires the Supreme Court to weigh in. So they basically ripped out all of that power to do these nationwide injunctions in the traditional sense, but they left intact the opportunity to do so as a class action. So on July 18th, a new preliminary injunction became effective, blocking the birthright citizenship executive order trying to take it away. But just on Friday, the Supreme Court, just this Friday, the Supreme Court announced that they will hear Trump versus Washington, which is the case in which the birthright citizenship issue is going to be determined. Moving on to mandatory detention, this regime started based off of a July 8th memo that then was made in effect by the Board of Immigration Appeals in a court case called Yajuri Hurtado that gave that memo legal effect. They basically made it so that detainees were ineligible for bond and must remain detained for the entire removal process unless paroled. So basically, it's indefinite detention. Advocacy groups responded by filing habeas corpus petitions, but that's very inefficient because you have to do it on a case-by-case basis. And so this got challenged in litigation as well. And Maldonado Bautista versus Garland, with a temporary restraining order. And at the end of November, so basically that court said that you can't do that. You have to have due process, and you can't just detain somebody summarily that way. And then at the end of this November that just passed, that class just got certified, which should, in normal circumstances, mean we have nationwide relief, so people don't have to continue to file these habeas corpus motions. Unfortunately, ICE has been automatically appealing most of these bond grant determinations so that people are still doing them on a case-by-case basis. So although one court ruled that the detention without bond hearing was unconstitutional and that detaining people, whether it's under the Lake and Riley Act or any other basis without a bond hearing violated due process, the policy is still being practiced by ICE nationwide. So attorneys continue to file habeas corpus petitions. The next big thing that happened is the Supreme Court basically greenlit racial profiling of immigrants in a case called Vasquez Perdomo versus Neem. In that case, plaintiffs had alleged that ICE was unconstitutionally stopping people based on race, ethnicity, language, and employment status without an individualized reasonable suspicion, which is required by law, or at least it used to be. The lower court agreed with the plaintiffs and issued a temporary restraining order saying, ICE, you can't go around racial profiling people. Well, the Supreme Court granted the stay that was requested by the not the Biden administration, the Trump administration, which basically lifted the lower court's injunction, effectively authorizing ICE to use racial profiling factors such as presumed race and ethnicity, what language they're speaking, or if they're speaking with a Spanish accent, what kind of job they happen to be. So that's why you find them at a lot of Home Depots, and locations to justify stops and interrogations. I'm still of the belief that that's unconstitutional, but here we are. That basically gave a green light for racial profiling in immigration enforcement, impacting not just, undocumented people, but obviously U.S. citizens or anybody who looks like they could be an immigrant. The underlying case is still pending, so we'll see if that changes. And that's a running theme. A lot of things are constantly shifting with this administration. They'll try something, it's deemed unconstitutional. They'll yield or not yield, and then there'll be more challenges. So you'll notice that theme throughout most of what we're talking about. We have noticed a record high death rate in ICE detention. Nationally, ICE detention centers have recorded the highest numbers of deaths in nearly 20 years. We have at least 24 people on record of dying in ICE detention over the past, I want to say, year, including a Haitian detainee, Marie-Ange Blaise, who passed away here in Florida. And you can read the tragic reporting in her case. She had been begging for care for her heart. And based on what we've been able to determine, it seems like those requests were not yielded to. We know that some of our congressional representatives have called for an investigation, so we're still waiting to see what's going on with that. But this is something that we're seeing throughout the system, not just impacting our community. A recent Amnesty International investigation stated that detainees of the Everglades detention facility, also marketed as Alligator Alcatraz, have been subjected to conditions rising to the level of torture, highlighting severe human rights concerns and lack of oversight in that facility. And to talk about oversight, I want you to know that I personally went to Alligator Alcatraz as part of a prearranged tour. I say prearranged tour because if it's a state facility, state officials should have unfettered access to go unannounced and observe what's going on to make sure that laws are being followed. If it's a federal facility, then our congressional counterparts have that oversight authority. Well, the administrations between mostly the state administration have been playing this game where they're saying that no, it's a federal facility. Then when the federal officials try to come, they say, well, no, it's actually technically under state laws. So which one is it? Well, we have lots of litigation pending. Some of my colleagues filed suit to try to gain access, full unfettered access to the facility. And we've seen the litigation go back and forth. Some people were under the impression that Alligator Alcatraz was closed because that's what initial ruling had decided, but then another court stayed that ruling, so it continues to run. And we're seeing other facilities like this pop up around the United States, in places like Texas and other places, and it's just a verifiable nightmare. In terms of the travel ban, for those who don't know, in June of this year, there was a presidential proclamation that issued a travel ban for 19 countries. Among them was Haiti. So it applies to nationals who were outside of the United States on the effective date, so that's June, and who did not have a valid visa at that time, and it stops new visa applicants, whether it's for tourist, student visa, work, all of those things have stopped. Now, there are some exemptions. Among those exemptions are for green card holders, dual nationals traveling on passports from non-restricted countries, certain visa classes like diplomatic and NATO, humanitarian-based categories, including adoption visas, family reunification, and of course, there's also the, not of course, but there's also the athletes one for major events such as FIFA. We know that we just qualified for the World Cup, and of the countries that are quote unquote banned by U.S. travel ban standards, that is still pending litigation. Actually, you have Iran and Haiti. So what happens is there can be an exception for these athletes, for the teams and their support staff, but it's not an automatic exception. They have to go through the processes and get certification. Within the last few days, the regime just decided to put a halt and review of all asylum applications. So no asylum decisions are being made from all countries. In addition to that, they also put a hold and a review on all cases from people who are nationals of the countries that are subject to the travel ban that we just discussed, including Haiti. So what that means is you could be, and we've seen some of this already, people are in line at their citizenship ceremony getting ready to be sworn in, and they're being pulled out of line because the administration has decided that they're going to do a re-review or a pause of all of those things for people from those countries. Now, the excuse that's being given is what recently happened with the shooting with the Afghan asylee who was approved under Trump. But I mean, whatever. We're not going to get into all of that. But that's the excuse for what is being given. And that issue was that policy memo was issued December 2nd and 3rd. USCIS also canceled and rescheduled thousands of appointments and stuff in relation to that. Now, if you do have a biometric appointment that you just don't show up to, I want you to be very careful because they are now deeming those no-shows as abandonment of the application. So that puts you in a whole other situation. So that's a lot of the bad news. I'm going to tell you about some of the good news and pushback, which is more too. But before I do that, I wanted to pause and share a resource with you all. I don't know who's going to be assisting me with this to share the link that I shared earlier. And what I want you to have access to, for people who want to just type it in on their browser, if you're watching it with us, it is just floridaimmigrant.org/know, like you know something, KNOW, dash your dash rights slash hashtag, which is like the pound sign, family, okay? When you go to that website, you're going to find information about know your rights. And if there's a way to share that on the screen, folks, I can walk people how to navigate through the website. But when you go there, you're going to see the know your rights, protect yourself and your loved ones. And there are lots of resources there that I want you to be familiar with. There's knowing your rights in your home. You know, if somebody comes knocking at your door, there's the rights in the workplace. There's your rights when you're driving in your vehicle. And of course, there are also rights when you're seeking medical care. In Florida, they had passed a law that required you, um, hospitals that receive Medicaid funding, to inquire about your immigration status. You do not have to respond to that question. You can just not say anything, regardless of whether you're a citizen or not citizen. We're encouraging you to not answer that question. Perfect. So that is up right now. So if you click on, for example, your home, you will see the different resources available there, and you can look at it at your leisure. I don't want to not waste. I don't want to use too much time of this webinar because this is important information, but don't open your door, remain calm. You can ask for a warrant, right? But we're seeing that they're playing games with warrants. And if you click on the workplace one, you see different things involved in your workplace. If you are a business owner and you have your own workplace, one of the most salient tips I will give you is that you can make it private. It's not open to the public, so ICE can't just show up without your permission. Now, this is under normal circumstances. We all know that we are not under normal circumstances. And then if you click on driving, if you're stopped while driving, you cooperate, but you don't give unnecessary information. Now, this goes across the board. You don't have to answer questions. You can, if you are a US citizen and you are being stopped, I would insist that you tell them, I am a US citizen. You have no authority to stop me, blah, blah, blah. But say you're a US citizen, offer to provide proof. Now, we've seen time and time again where they're arresting and mistreating US citizens, regardless of that. So, and sometimes multiple times the same person. So you want to communicate clearly that you're a US citizen. You should carry some kind of proof with you. I'm not saying carry your passport. I am saying carry either a picture or something of your passport. And you should make sure that your lawyer, your immigration lawyer, at least a trusted family member and somebody else who you trust has a copy of all your important documents. What are your important documents? We can click on family preparedness for me so we can show that. When I say your important documents, you want to make sure that you have your and the immigration lawyers can get into some of this, but your important legal documents that shows your status, whatever your legal status is. So different kinds of status, whether it's TPS or different visas, have different documents that show your legal presence here. You want to make sure that somebody has a copy of that, that you have a copy of that. If multiple members of your family are subject to deportation, you want to make sure that you have a trusted contact both in the United States, if you're in the US or whatever country you're in, and the country you're likely to be deported to, so that if something happens, somebody has access to your information and can get it to a lawyer. You're not scrambling to find documents. If you are subject to deportation, you want to make sure that you have a plan, right? Attention, pas capon. You want to, prévenir, c'est mieux que guérir. I'm going to give it to you in all the languages. You want to make sure that you're preparing yourself if something were to go wrong. You want to have a plan for your family. If you have kids in school, who's going to pick up your kids? Do you have a safe word? There are things that you can program, whether it's an iPhone or with Android, that if you press this or say this, it automatically calls somebody or sends a text message to say, ICE is here. So that way, if you don't get a chance to send any other message, they know to execute on whatever your plan is. Your plan may be to make sure that the kids get picked up, make sure that your pets are taken care of, make sure that they know somebody knows to get somebody your medication, somebody knows to get in touch with the lawyer so that they know to start following up on your case. What information do you need to make sure somebody have? Your name, your A number, which is your alien number. Every immigrant has one if you've been documented. You want to make sure they have your date of birth. Those are the basic things that they will need to be able to find you in the system. Now, we are having an issue with people being lost in the system, but under normal circumstances, those are the things that we would need to be able to track you down and get you the support that you need. For bank accounts or any assets, think about whether you want to have a will substitute or whether you need to have a trust to have somebody be able to exercise and do things. You can make it so that it's only effective upon your deportation or upon your incapacitation or whatever it is, so that while you're active, you don't need to have anybody having access. But if not, you have a backup plan in place so that things continue to run and you continue to have access to your funds should the worst case scenario happen, right? You want to, if you are somebody who has medical issues and you're taking medication, you want to make sure that you have a list of your medication. Maybe even consider getting one of those armbands if you have any specific things like heart conditions or things that require more emergency assistance. These are things that you don't normally think of, and I regret that I have to make you think of them, but you need to think of them because if you get in that situation and it's too late, there's nothing you can do. But these are things that you can do in advance. So I'm going to go on to the good news, and you can continue looking at the resource, but I wanted to make sure you guys had it. It's from the Florida Immigrant Coalition. They work in partnership with a bunch of organizations. That are doing the work that we want to be supportive of. So pushing back. So you've heard some of the pushback already, but like just today, we heard that Kilmar Brega Garcia was ruled to be released, and that's after a lot of back and forth. We saw, and when we're thinking about what are some things that you can do as an observer, you want to make sure that you're documenting what you're seeing. A lot of the things here will be subject to some kind of law stuff later on, provided we make it through this crazy period of this country's history. But you want to document violations. You want to record what you can. You want to capture officers' information. A lot of times, what's getting people the relief that they need when ICE is saying one thing and the facts are showing another is the documentation, is the video. So we don't always have the ability to do that, but there are lots of resources that people are coming up with for us to track ICE movements, for us to show up in community and record what's going on. And in some cases, you have places like Charlottesville and other places where the protests themselves make ICE back down, right? So it's kind of like a game of who shows up the toughest. But this is not for the weak. So you have to think within your community, who's the most exposed, who's the least exposed. If you are an undocumented person, you are the most exposed. So you're not going to be the one out there doing the protests, right? This is where you bring in the allies and the folks to show up. And we're seeing examples of this all around the country. You have a right to record interactions and just say that you're recording this interaction. And then you can ask the question, are you acting under a judicial warrant, right? Sometimes that works. A lot of times it hasn't been working. Um, are there and ask if you're free to leave. If they're asking you questions, you can just say you don't want to answer the question. You want to talk to a lawyer. You don't, and you just keep repeating it because they're going to keep asking you things. They're going to keep trying to ask you things different ways. They're going to try to trick you. You can just say, whatever. If you're legal, if you have legal status, you can say your legal status and say, "Am I free to leave?" And that shuts down the basis for their inquiry. If you have proof of it, you can show the proof. If you even get to do that, a lot of times it's beat up first, ask questions later. Unfortunately, as we're seeing these videos, you ask if you're free to leave. If you are, you just get the heck out of Dodge. If not, then, just keep asking for the attorney. If you have the attorney, if I were an undocumented person, I would make sure that I have my attorney on speed dial and I know it memorized. You need to memorize some numbers in case they take your phone of your trusted contacts, key family members. Illinois just passed a law to make it easier to sue ICE for a lot of their violations and blocking arrests at state capitals. We've seen efforts to do mask protections because they're showing up in mass. We saw some of that filed in California. I'm working on a bill right now that includes that addresses a lot of the Florida immigration drama that we have. But the bill that I have also prevents ICE from using these masks. And then we have um, just quickly what's going on in Florida. They had passed SB 2C during one of the special session. It removes in-state tuition for undocumented immigrants, bans undocumented people from receiving driver's license, and expands 287G partnerships, which is to make jails collaborate with ICE or police agencies collaborate with ICE. I filed legislation to undo all of that. It's probably not going to go anywhere, but what I have been able to do is work with our local governments to push back against forcing them to do partnerships with ICE in cases where it's voluntary as opposed to mandatory. So there are ways to intervene that may not be legislative. You just need to be there to show up to put the pressure where it needs to go. Another law that was passed in Florida was SB 4C, which criminalized undocumented entry and re-entry into Florida, which was just unconstitutional. And it was blocked by the federal courts as such, but that didn't prevent people from being wrongfully arrested using that crazy law. So that happened. And then I think I'm going to stop there and hold the rest for, what else you can do as a citizen or somebody who's vulnerable yourself. So I will pass it back to you, Mr. Nuffy.
Thank you so much, Rep. Joseph, for your comprehensive coverage, both in the State House as well as the community at large for what's going on. What we'd like to do, in addition to some of the Flick KYR materials, I just shared the materials from raise.is, which is the Raise hotline, which is a very, very important reference. And so before moving on to our next speaker, we just want to remind folks that there are 10 rights that people always have. Rep. Joseph mentioned some of them. Remain silent, refuse to answer questions, ask to speak with a lawyer, ask if you're free to go, ask to know the basis for and the facts leading to any stop, ask an officer or agent for their name, agency badge, and ID number, ask to see a warrant for any search, refuse to consent to a search, refuse to sign any document you do not understand, and carry a Know Your Rights card and provide it to any officer stopping you. Now, of course, these are the rights that people have, but in the current state of being, unfortunately, a lot of these rights are being trampled on, but it is important to at least know what they are. We will now pivot to our next speaker, Met Friendly Denis Julien Esquire. Milo. I'll have some comments afterward about advocacy.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Rep. Joseph, for this comprehensive overview. And I want to congratulate the Haitian Ladies Network for putting together this important, critical discussion. So the first thing I want to do is go over a typology of TPS beneficiaries, because TPS is ending in February, and rapidly I would like to do a typology, because only through a typology that we can realize how vulnerable the community is. The most vulnerable segment of TPS beneficiaries already have a removal order. So you have people here who are in the United States and they have TPS, but at some point they were issued a removal order. There are two types of removal orders. One that was issued by a judge, So this person, most likely, they had applied for asylum and it was not granted. They were issued a removal order. And you have a second category of people who came through the border. They were detained by ICE, and ICE decided to release them, sometimes on parole, sometimes, more often on recognizance. But before doing this, ICE issued a removal order because an ICE officer has the ability, under certain circumstances, to issue a removal order. And most of these people have no clue that they have a removal order. Now, for those people, unfortunately, if they are picked up at the expiration of TPS for Haitians, they don't have the right to see a judge. So they can just be picked up and sent back to Haiti. You have another category of TPS recipients who have the ability to adjust status, either through marriage or through a son. It's a wide variety, but most of them, they are married to a U.S. citizen, or they have a U.S. citizen son or daughter was 21 years old or older. And I'm telling you this while thinking of a woman whose son will be 21 in June of 2026. So we have a lot of people in this category where they don't have the qualifying relative yet, but at some point they will have it. And those people, those who already have the ability to adjust status, we're asking them to do it immediately. You have a third category of TPS recipients who've been here for 10 years or more. And for this category, provided that they have a qualifying relative, at the end of TPS, they will be referred to the court, the immigration court, and some of them will be able to avail themselves of cancellation of removal, which is a device which will allow them to adjust status, but it's discretionary, so it's important that the application be well put together. You also have a fourth category of TPS recipients who've been here since 2010, and before they came to the United States, or sometimes after they came to the United States, they have a claim for asylum. There's a misconception out there that if you've been in the country for more than a year, you cannot apply for asylum. This is not true. So these people, those who, the moment they came shortly afterwards, they were granted TPS and they've been on TPS since then, they still can avail themselves of asylum, and they should apply as soon as possible because we want them to get their fingerprint appointment while they're still covered by TPS. Fifth category, TPS, they came through the Biden program, and most of them, once again, they provided that they have a legitimate claim for asylum, they can apply for asylum. You have TPS recipients, some of them, unfortunately, because of how they came to the United States, when they came to the United States, and the fact that they do not have a legitimate claim for asylum, you have those people who have no pathway whatsoever toward regularization of their situation. And this is a segment that is almost as vulnerable as the one mentioned first, which is those who already have a removal order. Now, once we get into this territory, we need to discuss removal defense. Removal defense, what's going to happen with a lot of people currently on TPS is that they will be referred to the court system. They will be issued a notice to appear. For some of them, provided that they have a qualifying relative, they will be, once they get before the judge, they will be able to apply for cancellation of removal if they've been in the United States for 10 years before the notice to appear is issued, which is before they are referred to the court system. But once again, it's a discretionary benefit. They will have to put together a strong application. You also have people who, after TPS expires, will be able to apply for asylum and withholding of removal. We have those who will be able to adjust status before the judge, provided that the conditions are met. We will get to that during the Q&A, I hope. And you have a few people as well who will be able to avail themselves of VAWA, which is the Violence Against Women Act, and they may be men or women. And the abuse, those are people who were in a relationship with a permanent resident or a U.S. citizen who suffered abuse during the relationship, and the abuse does not have to be physical. We've had cases, granted, where there was no physical abuse, and we need to tell those people, tell the truth. We, get a psychological evaluation, put together a strong application to maximize your chances. Now, possibly one of the most important pieces of information that I will be sharing tonight has to do with the Calderon settlement. This is a little known settlement that was reached between the government and immigration advocates in January of 2025. What does it entail? The Calderon settlement, it's a class of people who meet those conditions. First, you have an outstanding removal order. Second, you are married to a U.S. citizen. Third, your U.S. citizen spouse has filed a petition for alien relative on your behalf, an I-130. Fourth, you do not have a pending application to adjust status before USCIS. And fifth, you currently live in the New England area. New England area is this area of the United States composed of the states of Massachusetts, Maine, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Vermont. So those who meet all those conditions, they can enlist the help of an attorney, immigration attorney, and submit a motion to ICE, to DHS, and the DHS's attorneys will join the motion, according to the terms of the settlement, to submit to the judge so that the removal order can be removed, the proceedings can be reopened and terminated. Now, the benefits associated, you have those peripheral benefits associated with the Calderon settlement. What are they? If you are a member of this class, the Calderon class, you cannot be arrested, you cannot be detained, you cannot be removed up until January 16th, 2027. Now, the question is, I meet all those conditions, but I do not live in one of those New England states. What do? You and your spouse have to move to one of the New England states. I have several clients of mine who have made the decision for two reasons. First, it allows them to adjust status for those who can adjust status, but you also have those who cannot adjust status based on the way they came to the United States. They can consular process, and all of this is part of the Calderon settlement. So those people, while they are members of the class, the Calderon class, they cannot be arrested, they cannot be detained, they cannot be removed from the United States. If they are ever picked up, the attorney contacts the class's attorney, and then they contact ICE and they take care of it. This is a very, very important tool for our community. Now, before I know we're short on time. Quickly, I would like to touch on asylum. A lot of people who came to the United States in 2010, 2009, or later on, they think that because they've been here for more than a year, they cannot apply for asylum. Some of them, a lot of them can, based on two main exceptions. The first one is changed circumstances. Changed circumstances may have to do with change in circumstances, a personal change, or change in the situation on the ground, or change in US law. A few examples: conversion to another religion, coming out as LGBTQ+, new or increased persecution in the home country, which is Haiti in this case, loss of previously available safe status. So you came to the United States in 2009, and before coming, you wanted to apply for asylum, but you were granted TPS right after you came to the United States. So now you can apply for asylum, stating in your application under the question as to, are you applying more than a year? You said yes, but my application falls within one of the exceptions, which is changed circumstances. When I came to the United States, I already was facing persecution, but because I was granted TPS, I did not apply. Not that now that TPS is ending, I'm applying. You have another scenario. I came to the United States in 2010. At the time when I came, I had no claim to asylum. But in 2015, my brother became a congressman in Haiti, and all the family subsequently has been persecuted. So my claim I can only raise the claim now because I didn't have it before. Now I'm applying for asylum. Another aspect of changed circumstances is material change in U.S. law, and we all know too much about this one. Extraordinary circumstances. First of all, uh, serious illness, mental disability, legal disability. Let's say when I came to the United States, I was a child. I was 2 years old. And now, my parents were making decisions. I could not do it myself. Now I can do it because I'm of age. This is legal disability. Death or serious illness. So I came 2 years ago, but I was seriously ill. I could not do it. Now I'm doing it. Another exception, timely filing that was rejected. I filed, but it was rejected. I'm doing it now. Incompetent representation of counsel. And you can do it even if you did not resort to the services of an attorney. You went to a form preparer, those notarios. He told you that he had submitted your asylum application. He did not. And you can, on this basis, apply for asylum. I know we're short on time. There's no way I can cover all the material.
Thank you so much, Maître Julien. As always, a pleasure to have you with us to share your insight. We will now pivot to our third speaker, who is Michelle Abechter, and she will speak about employment, economic, and business options, looking at status-compatible employment opportunities and pathways to work authorization. Michelle.
Thank you, Paul. So when we're evaluating the options, through employment, through investment, what we're really looking at is what is the individual's current immigration status. And so we're much more restricted in terms of, what Friendly just went through, because we need to really show that there's a clean path from the immigration perspective. So there is a large group of individuals who can use these options and don't know about them. But there's a very detailed analysis that has to go into what their pathway was to the United States and what status they've maintained since they got here. So, I'm going to give a few examples of profiles that normally can use employment options to their benefit. The most common or straightforward group are going to be those who enter the United States with a tourist visa, and in terms of timing, got lucky that they were able to apply for TPS and never had a gap in lawful status. And so with that background, really, they've maintained, from an immigration perspective, right, a non-immigrant status, legal status the whole time that they've been here in the United States. And so it's fairly straightforward to go ahead and then apply for a work visa, an investor visa. I'm going to go through all the examples. Another profile that we see. For example, it's a little bit more complex. If you entered with the CHNV, the humanitarian parole, maybe you entered with the humanitarian parole, you then switched to TPS, and you traveled, for example, on a TPS advanced parole, we'll have more options open up. But really, it's a case-by-case basis, and seeing whether you came in, whether you had time out of status, maybe just on asylum pending. If you had advanced parole and you use that document to go ahead and travel outside the United States, come back in the United States, and really see, what options we have based on your history. So in terms of the options that we have, there's a long list of options. I'm going to go through the ones that I'm seeing are most common with my Haitian citizen clients at this time. And so really what we're looking at is immediate options, right? Because we know that we have very little time until February. So what we're looking at for the most part is temporary work visas, rather than green card options, as a stepping point to then look at the green card options. So religious worker R1 visa is a common option that I'm using right now. So if you work with a religious organization, a church, you've been a member of that religious denomination for at least 2 years, they want to hire you, and they are a bona fide nonprofit religious organization here in the United States, they can hire you. So you need to be hired in a religious vocation or occupation. It doesn't need to be a minister role or a pastor role, but it needs to be something related to a religious occupation. We're also looking at, for example, the H-1B visa. That's a work visa. So there's two types of H-1B visas. There's one that is just you have employment for a regular company that wants to hire you. That one has an annual lottery in March. And so what we're seeing is because of the TPS end date, there will be a gap. So for those cases, we'd have to find kind of a bridge to hold you over until the lottery. But there is a nonprofit option. So if you have a job offer from a nonprofit organization that's affiliated with a university, a nonprofit research organization, there is no lottery. You can apply whenever you want, and that's something that we could immediately apply for if you have that employer. Okay. We're also looking at the O1 visa for extraordinary ability. So if you have recognition in your field, let's say you're a singer, let's say you're a business person who has significant recognition within your field. Let's say that you have press articles about you, or you won an award. You have you've had critical roles speaking at conferences, things like that. There's a lot of options within that O1 visa. So we always want to look at that if you have that profile. In terms of that extraordinary ability, there's both a temporary visa option, there's also a green card option. So we always want to analyze both. And then lastly, we're looking at student visas. So it's a little bit more challenging with student visas because we have to show that you still have ties to your home country, but we have been able to use this as an option. Now with the student visa, the limitation there is that, usually you're not allowed to work with a student visa. And so, most individuals need to have a work authorization, need to be able to work. So we have looked into some options where you do have, you're accepted into a program that allows you to also work while you're studying. So there are some options there. In terms of the travel ban that was mentioned earlier, it's important to keep in mind why, because all these options that I'm discussing have to be done within the United States. And in very limited instances, you can have a visa issued outside. So what we're looking at is all of these options that are temporary work options, H-1B, O-1, R-1, F-1, they require you to stay here in the United States. You're not going to have a visa stamped in your passport, so you won't be able to travel in and out of the country because visas aren't being issued, for Haitian citizens at this moment, unless you have a dual citizenship or fall within a small exception. Okay. So what happens if you've invested in this country, but you're based outside the United States now, right? You can't get in because your visa expired or you don't have a valid visa at this time. The idea is to protect your investments here until travel becomes possible again. So, we're hoping that the restrictions are lifted. The priority on your end has to be, preserving the business, maintaining compliance, and finding people who are here in the United States and who can cover for you while you're waiting for these restrictions, hopefully to be lifted. Okay. And then from the employer perspective, right? So what happens if you own a business and you have employees who are currently on TPS, right? Those employees are going to be losing their work authorization and their status shortly. So what can you do from an employer perspective, right? It's important to keep track of your employees' work authorization cards, track the expiration date, make sure that you're meeting I-9 requirements from a company perspective. And if you are in a position to be able to sponsor one of your employees or several of your employees, the time is now. So there's very little time, and every day counts. So I would say if you're in that position where you can sponsor your employees who are going to be losing status, now is the moment to be able to do that, help them and retain those employees.
I wanted to add one caveat to everything that was just said. So I guess I should be back on video. Okay, so neither Friendly nor I are currently taking on immigration clients. The only person who does do that right now is Michelle, who you just heard from. All of that notwithstanding, everything we just shared, none of it is legal advice for you. Okay? You need to have your own individual consultation with a lawyer about your situation. And that's either you as the person who is subject to deportation, or you as somebody who's trying to figure out what to do about somebody who's subject to deportation. You heard some very strong avenues that extend beyond TPS, right? That will allow you to stay in this country, whether it's pursuing relocation if you meet other criteria to fall within a particular protected class, or some business options, both as the employee and as the employer. Those are some very strong options to pursue well in advance of the February deadline. If you qualify, I know a lot of times in our community, we hear a lot about asylum. Asylum is not a be all end all. You have to qualify for asylum. That is not a default. Let me just do it. Oh, I can come up with something. No, this is not the time to be making stuff up. This is not the time to be playing those games. And I know sometimes, nous pensons nous smart passer tout le monde, but en vérité, this is not the time for that. Okay. So talk to an actual lawyer and make sure that you get a consultation. I know that Mr. Numphy is a lead organizer with FUM, which is a part of Flick, and they have every Wednesday, I believe, a thing where they go over different options. You can plug in and find a lawyer that will give you your own information. And to find those people's clinics, you would just go to www.flick.org. And by Flick, I mean FLIC.org/events, or you can contact them. They also have a hotline in case you have somebody who is suddenly taken into detention too, right? So these are things that you should consider as you go forward. None of what we just said is legal advice for you. You should talk to a lawyer to get an individualized assessment for you. And then all of this stuff is just general information that you can take and have more your creative juices flowings of other options you have beyond TPS and oh my God, I'm going to get deported. Okay? Maybe that's it. Go ahead, Paul.
Thank you very much, Michelle, and thank you very much, Rep. Joseph. And what we wanted to say two very quick announcements. That yes, indeed, there are pathways via Flick to get support, including legal support. I gave the Raise Hotline website earlier in the conversation, and we at the Family Action Network Movement also we team up with Catholic Legal Services, and every Wednesday we do have CLS lawyers who are on site. I put our phone number in the Zoom chat 305-756-8050 during office hours. People can call that number and press 0 to speak to someone to get an initial screening and then an appointment with a lawyer. So
wait, say that number slower for the translator people.
305-756-8050. Okay, 305-756-8050. Okay. So what we wanted to do, this has concluded the presentations of the three speakers. Prior to taking Q&A, we would just want to give a very quick 1-minute announcement about advocacy. As we heard many of our speakers say, this administration is bent on deporting or making continued presence unlivable or unworkable for as many of our community members as possible, which is not limited to TPS holders or people who have applied for asylum, even people with legal permanent residency. Everyone is being targeted right now. This was stated clearly and directly in the November 26 DHS statement on terminating Haiti TPS effective February 3rd, 2026, where they said that the presence of Haitian nationals is contrary to the U.S. public interest. So what is our response? It must be to remind the American public and decision makers of our presence, of our value to the social fabric and economy of the communities where we live. I'm thinking about Florida and specifically South Florida right now, the many industries where our presence is absolutely essential, whether it's health, construction, agriculture, and many other sectors, hotels, restaurants, senior citizen homes. And on both of these counts, as well as the fact that the grave dangers that our community members face if they are forcibly returned to Haiti, the facts are clearly with us on both of those counts and against the claims of the administration. But we must make the case in the public forum. So we must force the issue of our need to continue to remain in our communities, in our families, with decision makers, forcing their hand, putting them in a position of having to take a clear stand, and where possible, of pushing the issue of why they must backtrack on these very, very harsh decisions. One example of this is January 12th. Every year there's a coalition of elected officials, faith and community leaders, immigration law experts and advocates, and impacted parties annually who come together for the earthquake commemoration of the 2010 Haiti earthquake. We always do that starting at the Toussaint Louverture statue, 6136 North Miami Avenue in Little Haiti. It's going to be on January 12th. There will be elected officials' remarks and other community leaders at 4 p.m. The moment of silence is 4:53, and then we make a walk in front of Notre Dame d'Haïti Church to the Cultural Center. This is one example of engaging. We need large numbers of people to come out this year to really send a clear signal to the decision makers about our value, our worth, our narrative, and why we need to be considered favorably by decision makers, local, state, federal. So thank you so much for bearing with us. We're in the churches every Sunday these days, really making the case with many of the faith leaders, which is a key component of this advocacy. We will now mention that if you want to get involved, you can connect directly with the Haitian Ladies Network, who are sponsoring tonight's event and organizing it. The email address is info@haitianladies.org, and we want them to put that in the general chat so that people can see that. Okay. Perfect. Okay, thank you. Okay, and we will now go to our questions.
Wait, let me
So
piggyback off of your announcements. So getting involved. So Haitian Ladies Network, we're all a part of that organization, most of us who are tuned in tonight. You also heard a couple of other organizations mentioned on the call. FLIC, AI Justice, you know about FUM. There's also SUNTLA and Haitian Bridge. The reason I mention those is they are actively involved in whether it's litigation, providing direct services, servicing the vulnerable communities that we're talking about. And I encourage you, if you're looking for a way to get involved, some of them are membership organizations like FLIC and FUM at some level. That's if you're in this area. Others, they just rely on support. And it's been hard to get the support that they normally get under the new regime. So I encourage you to consider donating to these organizations. I'm going to say them again. It's FLIC, Haitian Bridge Alliance. That's Gerline Joseph, who's also a member of HLN. AI Justice, FUM, which Paul is a part of, and that is with Marlène Bastien, who's our commissioner down here now. And then you have Sutla, which is with Gypsy Metelis, who's also a HLN longtime supporter member. So I highlight them because now more than ever they need support. So you can join in on their advocacy workshops that they have. Paul mentioned sharing stories in January 12th. I know that there's a call to action to not just if you happen to be in Miami to join the one that Paul mentioned, but in other states, they're trying to get other people to organize. So as we're thinking as a community about different things that we can do, some of it is plugging in with some of those folks, but also thinking about mutual aid. The needs that people will have will be not just legal in terms of bond funds, legal costs, rapid response, getting people out of jail, documenting arrests, showing up where ICE is. Think about different ways that you can organize in your own community with some people who are less vulnerable and some people who are more vulnerable to connect those dots, right? So, fè kom bit nan kote ke ou mem ou ye, because those are some of the things that we're finding are some of the biggest protections in this new climate that we find ourselves in. And that's all I was going to add. Thank you.
We just wanted to add that Rep. Joseph is a regular every January 12th. Okay. And we hope to see you there this year. Okay, we're going to move on to questions. We have a question. Please cover section 245I, allowing undocumented immigrants of adjusting status if they have a pending application dated prior.
Friendly, do you want to speak to this or you want me to talk about it?
Paul was breaking up. I couldn't hear the entire question.
Okay, we're going to take it one more time. And the procedural question, do you want us to do multiple questions at a time or one by one?
One by one is fine with me.
Okay. Please cover section 245I, allowing undocumented immigrants of adjusting status if they have a pending application dated before April 30th, 2001.
So I'll share a few thoughts about this. Michelle, if you want to complete me, the odds of having a petition dated 2001 today are pretty slim, pretty slim. And I haven't seen one in years. I don't know what your experience is, Michelle.
Yeah, so the context that I've seen this in is when someone had a labor certification filed on their behalf, so they had an employer who wanted to sponsor them, and as long as it was filed, it wasn't filed frivolously and it was approvable when filed, then in theory it's something that could be used now. Again, I agree with Friendly. I think it's extremely rare. What I recommend everyone is do a FOIA request. The FOIA request is a request of your records from the government. I do FOIA requests for all my clients right now under that. It's something I never did in previous administrations. During this administration, I'm doing it for all my clients. So I go to USCIS and I do a FOIA request so that I can know everything about my client's immigration history. And I hope to find someone that's 245I eligible. That would be great.
And while you're getting the next question, I wanted to emphasize the FOIA. For those who don't know what a FOIA is, it's a Freedom of Information Act request. So what you're basically asking is the government to tell you what information they have about you, right? What their case is. And I will tell you, in law school, I did a case and we had built up one thing and then we got the FOIA file and it was a whole different direction. So both as a lawyer to do your due diligence, to know how you're preparing correctly, but also you, because then that might help you defend yourself because they might have wrong information about you. And if you didn't know that, you would be building a whole different kind of case. So make sure to get your FOIA in if you're proceeding with anything along immigration, especially right now.
And also, I'd like to add that lately we've been seeing a lot of clients who are coming to us after their application to adjust status has been denied. So they usually use a notario, a form preparer, to submit their application. Then the application is denied. They come to an attorney, and in the meantime, they are referred to the court. So you have a lot of people. I had a case recently, a couple weeks ago. The person came to me after the application was denied. We submitted the package, and a week after we did, she was referred to the court, and she was scheduled for an appointment immediately after we resubmitted the application. And during prep sessions, when I checked, because I always do that, if you're gonna go to your appointment, your interview, you need to check whether you are in removal proceedings. So during my prep session, before attending the interview, this is when I realized that the person has already been referred to EOIR, which is the court system. So this is very important. I wanted to mention as well that recently we come across an internal memo from DHS where they are asking officers to be chatting with ICE while they are conducting the interviews. And if they decide that they're gonna deny the interview, to give ICE 30 minutes notice so that they can come and pick up people, the beneficiary. So this is something that we wanted to put out there as well.
Yeah, Friendly. So I did share in the chat the link to go ahead and check if you have been referred to court. So you can go to that website, fill out your A number, and see if what your status is. So your A number is your alien number. If you don't know it, it should be on the receipt notices for certain cases that you've submitted in the past. But Friendly, building on that point, I see a lot of cases, same as you, that were filed out by, filled out by non-attorneys, and a record of the case wasn't kept. And you have no idea what was submitted on your behalf. And so that's when the FOIA can also really come in handy, because sometimes you think things were submitted and they weren't, or what you thought was submitted is completely different than the reality.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to actually, in the interest of time, go 3 questions at a time to allow us to cover as many questions as possible. 1, what do you know about the Trump Green Gold Card? 2, should TPS holders continue living under the address USCIS has for them? Those are for everyone. And the third question, Rep. Doty Joseph specifically, if asylum is considered a legal pathway for individuals who enter the country unlawfully, then for someone who has already applied for asylum and is currently waiting for a decision, how protected are they at this time?
I can answer the gold card question. So yeah, it's alive, it's open. There's a few options. Right now, what they did is open the individual Trump Gold Card. So what we know is that it requires a $1 million contribution, and it's a $15,000 filing fee for you and your spouse and your children. So we'll see how it goes, but for now it's open and you can apply on the trumpcard.gov website.
And as to the second question, should you continue to live at the address on file with USCIS? It's extremely difficult to answer this question without breaking any law. And this is a way of answering it.
I agree.
Well, I'll answer it indirectly and say, if you're considering moving to the Northeast, in some of the states that Franley mentioned earlier, as long as you have a legitimate reason to move, and once you move, you update your address accordingly, I think that would be more than appropriate. And then I didn't really follow the last question. I heard something about asylum and then legal and then not legal. Say it again, please.
Okay, re-rolling the tape. If asylum is considered a legal pathway for individuals who entered the country unlawfully, then for someone who has already applied for asylum and is currently waiting for a decision, how protected are they at this time?
So preface, I don't practice immigration law right now, and I will say, from my non-legal assessment, they are not very protected right now because they've halted all asylum applications. And we know politically that from Stephen Miller, from the first Trump administration, asylum has been on the chopping block for quite some time because that was one of the more solid pathways for protection under US and international law. And we have seen the trend from this administration of undoing anything that counters their goal of remigration. If you have not heard that term, I encourage you to Google it. It's basically a Nazi kind of reinvention of making sure that only certain people belong in this country, and it's ethnic cleansing. So that is part and parcel of a larger political agenda. So I'm going to speak to that answer from my political hat. Because this marker, now, of course, it's subject to litigation. I don't know that there's been any lawsuit filed specifically challenging yet, but if there isn't, I anticipate that there will be one. But as with any kind of regime that starts to rise, you're going to have them testing limits. And it's how easy people fall to their passing the limits or accept the limits, right? That's with any regime that does this kind of stuff. So right now, there's no lawsuit protecting you, so there is no protection, and they've frozen everything. So if ICE wants to do something, they can do it. Now, it doesn't mean that the protection might kick in later. So now I'm going to put in my legal hat. Like functionally, there might be protection later, but once you're deported, you're deported. You can try to come back. You might be Kilmar Abrego Garcia, but do you want to go through all of that, right? If there's another pathway, like the ones that were mentioned on this call, that actually applies to you after you consult with the attorney, then that will be a more solid footing for you. So that's with my legal hat. So I gave you the political answer, I gave you the legal answer. And I see Funley shaking his head, so maybe he wants to chime in with something more.
Yes, I'd
Yeah,
like
if
to
either
add.
lawyer wants to say something.
I'd like to add, and Representative Joseph is a lawyer too. So what I'd like to add is in our community, more than 80% of asylum applications are prepared by form preparers, notarios. And most of them, on some questions, they do not answer the questions. They say see statement. And most of the time, there's no statement. And the government recently has been moving to preterm it those applications. So you go to court either for your individual or your master hearing, and the government moves, and particularly for individual hearings, your last actual trial. And the government attorney says, Judge, we're moving to pretermine the application because it's incomplete. And in most of those cases, the judge will agree. And once they dismiss the application, you may be picked up while you exit the courthouse. And this is why it's important for attorneys to always have your not only before you go to court, you make sure that the application is complete, but even if after amending, but you initially had an incomplete application, you need to go to court with your argument because there's a motion, there's an opposition to the motion to preterm it. You have to have it. We also, as attorneys, have to have an argument against the third party agreements that the United States is concluding with countries like Honduras, Mexico, and so on. We need to anticipate those arguments because if not, we're not gonna be able to defend our clients competently.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the next set of questions. First of all, how do we know if one has a removal order? Is there a website? Second question, How can these adjustment of status be effective now that there is a permanent pause in treating Haitian applications? And the third one of them, and there are a few questions like this that are very individualized. This is from someone with the IRC Home Study Post-Release Program. They have families in need of resources. This is not in Miami or New York. They are looking for safe spaces for caseworkers to meet with families.
Branley, you want to answer the first question?
The first one, Michelle, I think you shared the website already in the chat. So please go to the chat and you will see the link that was shared by our colleague Michelle Abegger.
You
The
might have to
second-
say it again because there's a separate chat for panelists that may not be accessible to the general chat.
So it was sent to everyone. You'll see where it says this is a link to check whether you've been referred to court, and it's
Okay.
acis.eoir.justice.gov. And
Thank you.
that's where you go ahead, you put in your alien number, your country of citizenship, and you're going to see there the history. Either it's going to say no records found, which is ideally the situation, or it'll tell you the last update on your case.
So let me repeat it slower. acis.eoir.justice.gov. Once you get there, you enter your alien number. And where do you find your alien number? Michelle already explained it. Any application you've submitted to USCIS, there's your alien number. But the shortest way to get it, go to any work permit, valid or expired, and you're gonna find your USCIS number. On the left-hand side, in the middle, you're gonna see USCIS number. This is your alien number. You enter that and you enter your country, Haiti, and then you're gonna know whether you have a removal order, and this is where also you go to know whether you have a pending hearing and at what time and where your hearing will be held. Adjustment question. Is it still worth it to be submitting applications for adjustment while they have suspended treatment of those applications? The answer is yes. They are not adjudicating the applications, but they're accepting them. If you have a pending application for adjustment and you get picked up by ICE, normally, if they're reasonable, they need to understand that they should let you go. If they do not let you go, you will qualify for bond. Okay? So usually you will qualify for bond. And if anything, today I received an order where the person has a pending application, and we told the judge, there's no need for my client to be before you. We want to go back before USCIS, so we submitted a motion to terminate proceedings based on matter of Coronado Acevedo and on the court's inherent sua sponte authority, and it was granted. So now we're going back before USCIS. In some instances, if you get picked up, the judge may not send you back to USCIS, but you should be able to adjust status before the judge.
And from an employment perspective, I feel the same way. So of course, every case is different. You need to speak to an attorney based on your specific situation. But in most cases, I prefer to have an adjustment of status pending than have you with what's the alternative, right? With no status or, with no green card pending. So in most cases, it's still favorable.
We have a comment from community advocates and leaders, Jocelyn McCalla and Steve Forrester. Bottom line, every person with TPS from Haiti needs to lawyer up and layer up, meaning you need to get advice from a competent expert in immigration law, and you need to have as many pathways of protection as possible. Estimates of qualified immigration lawyers still available and taking on cases, that is a question. We have a few other questions from the question chat. People who came in through the Biden sponsorship and applied for TPS, are they recommended to apply for asylum? I think people have been touching on that, but that question was explicit. Can people share a bit about special immigrant juvenile status? The question poser realizes that many Haitians do not know about the SIJ and youth who might be eligible and are missing out on a potential avenue for relief.
Okay. Let me tackle for Biden TPS, as Forrester and McCullough said, lawyer up and you'll know. And it's really a pleasure to know that these two fierce advocates are on the call. Say, hi, guys. Now, for the Biden, yeah, definitely, this is a lot of people from Haiti have legitimate claims to asylum and they have no clue. So it's important that they see an attorney. And I think, given the magnitude of the need, we may, organizations like Haitian Ladies Network, Santla, FAM, and Flick, we may have to gather a bunch of attorneys and have a big, big events for people to come for free, and so that we can evaluate their respective situation. I think this is the time to do that, to go free, to go pro bono now, so that we can touch as many people as possible. Now, for special immigrant juvenile, uh, this is not widely known in our community. So if a child came to the United States, and we have a lot of cases of kids who came through the Biden program, if they came to the United States and they only came with one parent or no parents at all, and we can make a case that they were abandoned by one of the parents or both parents, there's a path to a green card for those kids. Now, it's a two-step process. The first one happens in family court. So they need to hire, I represent a few kids and I partner with other attorneys on the family side of it. So we need to work on two fronts. Usually those kids, some of them, they are referred to the court system, and the judges usually are amenable to granting continuances until we can get the order from the family court. Once you have your order from family court, the judge will terminate proceedings to allow those kids to apply for their green card. Based on, and this is the common parlance is unaccompanied minors. This is how they call them, unaccompanied minors. But when you say unaccompanied minors, it does not mean that both parents are not there. Sometimes you have one parent here, one parent in Haiti, or one parent here, one parent was unknown, and you can proceed with this. Now, we have heard of cases of instances where the administration would make house calls and try to snatch those kids. In other cases, they made the household under the guise of checking on the welfare of the children. And it is our job as attorneys to advise the people in charge and the kids themselves on how to protect themselves. Those kids, and Rep. Joseph mentioned earlier that you need to have your attorney's number on speed dial. Those kids, we have to be in constant contact with them to protect them. But this is one of those devices that is seldom used in our community. It's not well known, but this is a pretty good path toward a green card.
I wanted to mention something based on what you said earlier, Floodley. I know we had partnered, Flick, Haitian Bridge, and a couple others had partnered to do like a Haitian immigration town hall. That was a while ago, before all of this more recent changes, right? But I do want to point out that they do have these Protect the People clinics where you can get a free Zoom consultation. Paul mentioned the phone number for FUM earlier, where you can call to schedule and get a free consultation. I know in some instances, the Haitian Lawyers Association sometimes also does free consultations. So There is zero reason why you should not have access to a lawyer, especially a free lawyer right now. Now, if we need to do more of them, I can reach out to these organizations and we can coordinate a specific day or something for people to do it in a safe way, that doesn't expose you. But these ones that I mentioned earlier, so just to reiterate, it's flick.org/events. And they have these Protect the People clinics where you can schedule a time to have a call with an attorney to go over your individual thing. So to answer the asylum question once and for all, should I apply for asylum? It depends. If you actually qualify, sure. But to know if you actually qualify, you need to sit down and talk to a lawyer to go over the circumstances of your case, because it's not like this free get out of jail card or stay out of deportation card. It is a very specific thing that covers people under specific scenarios. And if the facts don't apply to you, then they don't apply to you, and you're better off applying for something else. It is not the be all save all that sometimes people try to pretend it or present it to be, right? And to mention the thing about the notarios and the people within our community that do this, I want to give a shout out to Representative Marie Woodson in the Florida legislature, who is the first Haitian American out of Broward County to be elected to the Florida legislature, who had a law that got passed to protect people against some of these notarial things. And they need to make sure that they let people know that they're not licensed to practice and all of these things, so you know what you're getting involved in. Because some people think, this is a discounted way to do it. Sometimes that discount that you got cost you so much more that you can't even get back. So just be very mindful of that. I'm not saying there's not a time to use certain people for certain things. That is not the point of what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if you have a real legal situation and you're in potential legal limbo, you can't be playing bagaj bagay serious. Okay, so and then shout out to the people on the call. It's always great to hear you. And since I heard Steve's name mentioned, he had shared an article for folks who hadn't seen it, about the magnitude of mass rapes that are happening in Haiti right now. And it is wild. And I don't think people understand the craziness of what's going on in Haiti. So it's up to us to share those stories. I know that Tessa wanted me to mention that. And Tessa is the executive director for Flick, Tessa Petit. And she also wanted me to share with respect to TPS, there's still ongoing litigation, right? So that's the tentative date that we have right now. But there are two cases that are pending, one in California, one in DC, some of whom they're, party to. We have the one with Haitian Bridge as a partner, and I believe FUM with a couple folks is a party to the other litigation, where we're expecting a favorable injunction in one or both of those cases, which might give us even more time for TPS. But if the point of this call was so you don't just rely on TPS, you can start pursuing other avenues in case that falls through. But these people, we have people in the community who are still fighting, even for TPS, even as meek as it seems right now. So carry on.
Yeah, and as Rep. Joseph mentioned, we could get a favorable ruling, either an injunction or a favorable final ruling at the district or appeal level. However, the Supreme Court could agree to what the Trump administration has been doing in terms of a lot of these emergency orders, where basically that might be the end of it. And so therefore, people need to have as many pathways of protection as possible. There's so many great questions. Unfortunately, our time is up. So we do want to, first of all, mention Saskia Michel put in the chat. She was saying that the link was the chat was disabled. They could not get into the link. So we want to make sure that that issue was resolved in terms of the link to check for people's status. We want to thank all of the great panelists who were part of this really laudable effort in informing the public, not only about what is the current lay of the land, but also what people can do. Because if we do not get involved and engaged in this current battle, it is almost certain that we will not win. And it is in fighting the fight and an informed fight that we can hopefully prevail and protect as many people as we can while we are moving forward to potentially a better future. But obviously, there's a big question mark there. Ariel, would you like to say something?
Oh, well, thank you very much, Paul, but I'm going to pass it on to my board member, colleague, Elodie Manuel. She will close out for us. But thank you to all the panelists, and Elodie will give more information.
Oh, let me say one quick thing. If you have additional questions, I think anybody on the call has social media. Now, if it's a legal question that should be private, I would suggest calling, like look us up and call. But otherwise, feel free to catch us on social media. Most of us are on Instagram. If you have any questions, I know I answer my own DMs. I know Funly's pretty responsive. Follow us for updates and all that stuff, and we'll try to keep you as informed as possible.
Thank you so much to the panelists. Thank you everyone for joining. We had nearly 300 people participate this evening. So needless to say that this is an issue that has impacted us all directly or indirectly. I'd say a lot of the decisions coming out of this administration. Deepest gratitude to the panelists, not only for your contribution this evening, but for the work you're doing day in and day out to support our community through these challenges. Want to make sure I acknowledge and thank our sponsor, the City of North Miami, for supporting this webinar, as well as other programming like this that we make accessible to the community. Before we close, your feedback is extremely important to us. We have dropped the link to a post-event survey. Please, please, please make sure that you fill that out. We'll take a look at your responses, and I've already heard from a few people that a follow-up panels to this conversation, diving into some of the specifics that we brushed on would be helpful. So we'll be looking into organizing that. Again, follow us, continue supporting us, HaitianLadies.org. Thank you again to everyone. One of the resources available, we've heard from Ms. Pereira this evening. She's offering counsel free of charge. So we will follow up with her, get that information. And we'll be including in a follow-up email to all of the participants, all of the resources we've shared in the chat this evening. So if you did not register, but want that information, please do register. We'll need your email in order to get you that information. Otherwise, again, thanks for your participation this evening. Thank you, everyone, for helping us cover this important topic and getting this information, critical information, out to our community.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Elodie. And again, thank you to the panelists and our dear moderator. Thank you for all the work, like Elodie said. Thank you for the work that you do, and thank you for your time tonight. Thank you.